One of the Event Tech Takes brought to you by Event Tech World. I'm Vanessa Lovett, and I'm joined today by someone very interesting who is right at the coalface, of deploying event technology. And this is Chuma Soko, who is Senior Customer Success Manager from Cvent. Chuma, hello and welcome. Thanks so much for coming today.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Vanessa. This is really exciting. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, we've had quite a fun conversation preparing for this, I have to say. It's taken me back a little bit because in a past life, I used to manage a customer success team in an event tech company, and it was brilliant to have a little trip down memory lane. But before I start asking you a few questions about how to really succeed when rolling out event tech for the first time, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and about your work? And also, what does it actually mean to you to be a customer success manager?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for introducing me once again, Vanessa. I'm Chuma Soko. And like you mentioned, I'm a lead customer success advisor here at Cvent. I'm based in the London office. So first, for anyone who doesn't actually know us, Cvent is an event technology platform. And we help organizations through the entire event lifecycle, right? So how you manage your venue sourcing, registration, all the way through to what's happening on site and post-event reporting. And where my role comes in, customer success is really all about what's happening post-sales. So, you close the deal, contracts have signed, and now you've got this piece of tech that you have to implement across the board. So what I do is I work very closely with our events team, and just to make sure that you're actually seeing the value from the platform that you've purchased. So in this case, I'm with Cvent. So making sure that that rollout is done smoothly through the onboarding process, ensuring that planners are adopting our products, and also supporting you through those very key business outcomes as well. What you guys actually really care about. So it could present itself in many different ways, but we really work towards the success of that using Cvent. And most of all, it's just really helping you see the value and the investment that you've put into Cvent and turning that into more measurable, long-term, impactful goals.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And you have teed up a couple of questions for me perfectly. So thank you for that. You just said the contract signed, and that's when you start to get involved. So my first question for you then, if you've just signed a contract with Cvent or another event technology platform actually, but obviously you're speaking with your Cvent hat on, contract's just signed, before anybody even logs in to the platform, what are the first sort of conversations that you would encourage a team to be having internally to really set themselves up for success?
Yeah. I think the key thing, one of those key internal moves to have is really just being able to establish who the owner is for that piece of event tech, and establishing that core squad, right? That core team that you will put together before you actually even, start having conversations. We start kicking off from the account team perspective. So really having that core group of people internally will be able to help with establishing what are those main pain points and challenges that has brought you to us in the first place, to that piece of event tech that you've purchased or with Cvent. You really want to be able to unpack that internally and get aligned internally about the first kind of things that you'll want to start establishing before you start having a conversation on our end. And your small key kind of core team can look like, that product owner, the planner themselves. Do we need to bring in somebody from marketing? Is integration required, or data or IT? Someone to bring in. So to be able to close that gap on who that core squad should be, I think we'll be able to help establish what we'll then move into when you start having conversations with the account team. It's just really just having the good core set of people internally first.
I like your phrase, core squad. I like that a lot. And then what's the most helpful thing that a brand new customer can tell you at that point? So perhaps they've had a conversation, they've identified 4 people that are part of this core squad. What's useful to share at that really early stage, like I said, before they've necessarily even logged into the platform?
Yeah. Exactly. Even before that, we want to be able to establish, like I mentioned, what the challenges and pain points have been that has brought you here. There's a reason why you have purchased this particular event tech, and in this case, Cvent. So being able to clearly identify that, do you want to be able to improve your attendee experience on site? Do you want to be able to have better reporting or, improve ROI and different aspects of like the event's experience? So those different pain points you'll have. Maybe you're working very, very manually and you want to be able to streamline certain processes. We will have those conversations about those challenges. You would have had those conversations already through sales of those challenges and how we can demonstrate from an event tech perspective how we can help you with that. But actually being able to reestablish those with your core account team, then be able to, that then helps us understand your pain points, some of the challenges that you've had previously, and then translate that into some of those key business or event outcomes that we will be able to establish together and what we'll work together to ensure that we're improving those for you and to ensure that those will then become successful using the platform.
Yeah, I can imagine that you probably get a lot of, we want to do better events. Just quite a generic, we want things to be better, but perhaps without detail. And you, I'm guessing, want the detail to be able to actually help achieve those goals. How could you perhaps give some advice, or how do you see teams that take that and take it forward a little bit and translate that into something a bit more measurable, a bit more sort of actionable in that first 6 months? Do you see that there's a trend with teams that are well disposed to saying, this is actually what we really want and these are the details and this is what it might look like? Or do you get faced with better events quite a lot?
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of our personal challenges when you work in customer success, is to really draw out some of those outcomes or measurable objectives that we say when teams come to us and say, we just want to be able to have a better event. We just want it to be better than the last one
Which for you is a nightmare because you don't know what the last one was.
But what we essentially want to do is turn what better means to you, right, into those measurable objectives. What does better mean for you? How do you distinguish what a better event is in the first place? And for that, we need to be able to look at what some of those like measurable objectives can be. And some of those themes can be experience. You want to be able to improve the attendee journey from the point of when they get that invitation through the point of when they're going through their registration process is happening on site through engagement. Or it can be reach. You're getting registrations in, they're coming in just fine, but you're not actually seeing people show up in person. Right? That show rate is quite low. So being able to improve that, or maybe efficiency and insight. So being able to improve processes is taking quite a long time, or even, I've heard with some event professionals, it's a very manual process for maybe checking in on site. We're still, ticking people off of papers and how to improve that using an app through on arrival, for example. So just a number of different ways of establishing those themes of what better should be or what better looks like, not only for your attendees, but even for your planners internally, to be able to get rid of all of the mundane manual work that we sometimes see, to then be able to kind of automate that, to then focus on really what is important in terms of working on the experience overall for that event.
And I think what I'm taking away from what you said there is be really specific. Don't be generic. And you'd probably rather someone gave you a really specific, really challenging objective than something generic like better events, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. And it helps me do my job better because then I know specifically what I need to do to then be able to help you succeed with this piece of tech that you've got with us. And I know we unpack that as we go along as well. It might not be clear as day immediately, but as we start to have continue to have conversations and with different team members as well, we then really start to unpack that a little bit. Seem a little bit generic in the beginning, but eventually I pull it out of you. I know exactly, at least for that one flagship event that we're working towards, or a couple that we want to work on and at least improve what has happened that has been a challenge previously. We can at least draw out of that 1 or 2 wins to say, at the end of the day, you can take this back internally and say, oh, you know what, with this is what we're able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we've done the early stage and now people are starting to log in and actually put the plans into practice. What do you see as the biggest difference between teams that really build momentum in the first, let's say, 3 months, so pretty early stage, and those that maybe there might be some points of stalling, things aren't going quite as fast as anybody wants them to, the team or you. What are the differences between those two setups?
I think the main differences that I've seen in my experience are those that kind of the teams that kind of treat that new piece of tech when you're going live as the start of something that you're changing, something new, something fresh, and not just another project that is being run or worked on in the background to see how things go. I think that's where a lot of teams that kind of continue that momentum treat that as really you're using this to then be able to elevate and improve things beyond what has been done before, and being able to stretch the boundaries of what you've already worked on. And then obviously having a specific goal or use case in the first instance. We are driving towards that first event. That's usually how we get started within Cvent. During our onboarding process, we just ask you if you've got a main flagship event or one or two or across the board if it's different regions. It's really homing on specifically, we want to aim to improve this about this event. We're working towards that goal. And then at the end of it, we'll sit down, we'll debrief, and have conversations about how we move forward. Where we see some teams stall is, we start the onboarding process. Some teams have taken training, for example, but we're really relying on that maybe one or two people that then become like the one go-to power user, but not really like defining a concrete first win. And then also treating it may be a case of like treating this as, oh, it's something else I have to take on top of my day to day. If there's already, you're closing out a contract using a different platform, that's one of the examples. And it's kind of like, oh, I have to learn this thing to move forward. I think there needs to be an establishment of timelines of we've got this until this date. We need to establish and implement this. And this is where we're working to beyond that with the events moving forward. I think there is kind of that struggle internally sometimes if there's still something else to rely on in the background that you kind of don't adapt to the new
Yeah.
platform quicker.
Well, I guess it is a big shift or a big lift, and a big lift and a big shift for a lot of
Yes.
folks here. And the main takeaway I'm picking up on here is think of it less as a project and more as a program, maybe, and more of this like a transformation effort and initiative. And transformation never comes about with a little bit of effort. It tends to take quite a lot of effort. So thinking big is probably where I'm going with this, but also, and I really like what you said here, make sure there are early phase wins that are outlined, defined, definable, I guess actually is important. And that probably comes back to this detail around what does better events actually look like, and just having milestones and sort of a sequential approach to progress, because that's all you're ever trying to get, right, is the next stage and the next stage, but with some good outcomes that you can measure on the back of it. So it makes sense. And ownership, you did say ownership there again, and I don't think we can get away from ownership just being so important.
Yeah, exactly. We just see with customers that really take this on, there's a sense of curiosity and excitement in the technology that they're using, and really being able to clearly understand what it will do for you. I think that's really key, because then you're then able to unpack a whole new world of a set of tools that you didn't think were at your disposal to then be able to just go and
Okay.
execute it.
Right. Now, this is cool.
Yeah.
We're unpacking a whole
Yeah.
new world of tools that are enabling you to do things. So let's talk about adoption. So maybe we're now, let's say 6-ish months in. Maybe a bit less. Let's go to 4 months. So a bit more than 3 months, but not quite the 6 months mark yet. There's been some good early starting points. Early milestones have been hit. But now this is the point when actually more whole scale adoption beyond that initial, the core squad that we called it.
Yep.
So that's when it can become a real test. A couple of people are really excited about it. A couple of people are like, oh God, here we go again. And then you've probably got a load of people in the middle as well. So what have you seen can really help in that moment? Let's say, about 4 months, 6 months in, maybe even a little bit longer, to really try and get those champions working effectively, but to just keep that structured rollout happening, whilst also keeping people energized and up for it.
Yeah. One of the ways, a few ways that that can be done, right? So obviously we'll have an initial onboarding process. You'll get to know all it is, or maybe depending on what your product is with Cvent, all that product can do. And really, it's just now in terms of building on that adoption and building habits using that piece of technology. You want to be able to have a really simple playbook, right? This is how we run events in Cvent, and being able to document that in some kind of way. And within that documentation, you would have, within that onboarding process, established event templates for yourselves. So it's not a case of where every single time somebody comes in, logs into the platform, starting an event from scratch. And that can also be quite challenging at times if somebody has to do that. So really being able to establish that playbook of, right, this is Cvent, this is how it works. Now, this is how it works for us. And then with that, you're then able to then define the roles, right? I believe everybody can't do everything, right? So those key champions or those key event teams will have somebody who builds or updates those templates. And if there's an approval process that's required, somebody who's doing that, and then building up those reports for creating spaces where people are able to manage or look at those reports on their own without the need of the events team. Like, one of the most kind of painful things that customers come to me about is, I'm always being chased about this report for attendance, or like who's coming for the RSVPs. Being able to establish an automated way of knowing, once the event is running, it's automated, where those reports are going and who needs to see it. So establishing all of those roles and really looking at, what is the starting point for any new events as well. So adoption presents itself in different forms depending on the type of teams that you're working with. But I think really just having that playbook and a set of champions who have established themselves to be able to roll out and start building those habits for everybody else.
It's playbook. I'm definitely going to take that way, really importantly. And a documented playbook,
Yeah.
I assume you mean as well. This isn't just something that's anecdotally shared. It's a real official way of working.
Exactly. And there are obviously other tools out there that make it a little bit more interactive. Everybody has their own way of learning nowadays. There's no one fixed way of doing things. And it's also because there's always an evolution with technology. What you would have said is a way of working last year might not necessarily be the way of working this year, just because of how that event tech has evolved and changed for the better, so that it has to change with it. So there's a sense where some playbooks can become outdated because we're not kind of revisiting them to then be able to update them based on the technology changing as well.
And you would help your customers update those playbooks, right? This isn't something you expect them to do all on their own.
Exactly. That's right. I mean, I like to be very close to my customers, even the ones that are self-sufficient, like to do things on their own and don't need me. I still say, let's just get, even if it's quarterly, even if it's every 6 months, let's have a conversation about product updates. What has changed? What has changed for the better? You may have come to me with a pain point where we had a workaround, and kind of sometimes we're trying to fit things to work for us in terms of something that's not built in the way that we had imagined it to work. And so when something exciting comes, that's an update that I cannot wait to tell you, because guess what? I'm like, that thing that you told me 6 months ago, even a year ago, we've managed to find a solution for you. And I think this will really work. So I want to be able to tell you that. And in updating that playbook that we had set at the beginning to say, this is how you guys are going to work. Maybe let's revisit that and reset and make some changes, because there's some exciting new things that have come up that are going to change.
Yeah.
And make things even better for you.
I have to make a clip around what you were just saying there, because you just captured how much customer success managers want their customers to succeed. You summed it up so nicely there, that new things do come out. This is a good thing. Like, people want new stuff. They want new enhancements to the tech they're using. And your role is to get it in front of the right customers at the right time so that they can use it. And
exactly.
how do you recommend your customers? So you said quarterly reviews at sort of least there. What is a good way to have an ongoing relationship with the customer success manager so that you can get those new feature updates, but you can also run by new ideas with your customer success manager? You can raise issues if there are any. What do you, again, in your experience, has been successful?
For me, honestly, let's meet up at least once a month. I know that can be a stretch, but identify those key people again internally that would be able to have that time to connect. Even the busiest of teams I've experienced with with the customers that I manage, we still manage to slot in at least 25 minutes monthly. We look at some of the challenges that might be ongoing. We look at, discussing the outcomes. Are we on track with those? Where are we? Are we getting closer to where we need to be for what we're working on? And also those key product updates, because I know that knowing what's up to date for that particular month will help moving forward. It doesn't have to be rolled out straight away. It's a busy time. Events are running. We don't want to interrupt that flow, but I want to make you aware of it so that when we do have space to breathe, i.e. usually the summer, we can then revisit some of those to then be able to tweak some of those builds so that moving forward, that's in place. But at least having that conversation, making you aware of what is upcoming or something that is new, you have in the back of your mind, it's like, okay, when we have a little bit of time, guys, guess what? We can also try this because I think this will make life a lot better for us.
This is my last question now, Chuma. I'm very sad to say.
Okay, so am I actually.
One piece of advice, if you could just give all new Cvent customers one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice, I would say it really starts with reading the manual. You'd be surprised.
I wouldn't.
Because not a lot of us, it's not something that we're used to, right? We buy a new phone and we just kind of figure out how it works, or whatever gadget that you buy, you kind of figure out how it works, but we don't actually focus on reading the manual. So this translates into like, if it's Cvent, if it's any other piece of event tech that you have, like take that training, really get to understand and know what that does. And then from there, then start to focus on what your first big win should be.
Mm-hmm.
With that piece of tech. That way you're able to then know how it works, understand how it works, how it will work for your team. And then also at the end of it, if it's just that first event or a couple events after, really being able to see, guys, this is what we set out to do. And guess what? We did it because, this is what we did.
Yeah, I honestly read the manual. I mean, I needed that reminder actually.
Yes.
Thank you, Emma. So thank you for that. We're all busy people and we are guilty of perhaps not always allowing time for this. And actually, I think this has been a recurring theme, this ownership piece. To me, that comes down to ownership. It's the people. It's not about the tech necessarily. Obviously, you need the right tech to be able to achieve your goals, but you've got to have the right core squad.
Yes.
The right champions, the right time allocated, the right sort of attention with your customer success team. So going back to the supplier as well, read the manual. These things, they take time and they take focus and they take actual effort and initiative. And I think that's a really big takeaway from this point, as well as the second bit, which is know what you're trying to achieve and then just stick to that like glue and be really, really focused on that. Because I'm sure with a tool like Cvent, there will be lots of tools that they don't necessarily need to use to be able to achieve each specific goal. So it's making sure you're using the right tool at the right time to get that right outcome.
Exactly.
This has been great. I have loved having a customer success person on this Event Tech Take. And there are many more of these in eventtechworlds.com member area, which I encourage you all to go and have a look. There'll be a few snippets of this online as well in social media. But thank you so much for coming and sharing what it's like from the other side when you're the one actually on the supplier side. A little description there of what Event Tech customer success managers are actually there trying to do for their customers, because the more you guys can use customer success managers, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And you want to be used, don't you, Chuma? You're there.
Yes, please.
Use me. But you have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts and advice. And we will see you at probably Cvent or Connect or something like that at some point in the future. Thank you again, Chuma. You've been fantastic.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
No worries.
Thanks.